I'm Anna, and I am 26 years old. I have a beautiful family with my husband, Cole, and my 3 kids. Although I may seem to be living the perfect life, it was far from it just a few weeks ago. A series of events that involved my evil stepsister led to a big falling out with my family and her own biological family as well. Here's how everything went down from the beginning. When I was around 17, my parents divorced, and I stayed with my dad, Kyle. He had soon met another woman named Paris, and they eventually got married fairly quickly. The change was a little unusual and fast, but I managed to adapt to it. Because Paris apparently owned a mansion, my dad made the step to move into her home. My older brother Ryan, who is only 2 years older than me, and I followed suit. We both soon discovered that we now had new step-siblings. In time, we met Brittany, who was 19, and London was 15. Instantly, I noticed that Brittany was, in short, a brat. She would throw huge tantrums around my now stepmom and whine about how she needed a new phone, car, pets. You get the drill. Since I was never that much of a materialistic person, I found this behavior to be a bit strange, but maybe it was just the difference between social classes. Her little brother wasn't that bad. The only issue with him was that he was a bit of a video game addict. He'd overspend on video games, but after he did, London would just suck it up and wait for the next week. Unless he was very desperate. Paris was actually a very sweet woman. Shortly after Ryan and I had moved in, Paris sat down with us and explained our new allowances to us. Even though I was 18 and Ryan was 20, Paris deposited $350 into our bank accounts every week. We felt that this was an insane amount, but apparently for Brittany, it wasn't. She overspent every week, whereas I had around $250 left after I was done. Brittany's mom was too lenient on her, I believed.
Mom, I really need to get my nails done. These nails are ugly as hell. I need new ones.
What about your allowance? I had already increased it to $400 a month.
That's not enough. Why are you such a rude mom? I wish I was in Nadia's family. I hate you, Mom.
London told me that Nadia was Brittany's best friend, and how Nadia's family was one of the wealthiest in this part of our city. Apparently, she had no limit to her allowance and owned 5 cars. This was a bit insane, but these people had money. Who am I to judge? At one point, Paris had to get my dad to help control Brittany, but even with that, she found other ways to get her money. She'd steal from Paris's wallet, sell off her mom's expensive jewelry, and even take the allowance from one of her siblings. I had actually caught her logging into my bank account one day and trying to transfer money to her own account. Of course, I would always be ready to bring this issue up to my stepmom, but Brittany would end up doing something that frames me for an even worse crime. So, I instead paid her a small bribe to keep her off my tail and kept silent about the whole thing. Now, I didn't really mind much about this because this was technically Paris's money, not mine. But even as this wasn't her own stuff, Brittany got what she wanted. Over the course of about the next 3 or 4 years, Brittany got jealous over everything that I did and consistently complained to her mom about how she could treat someone else better than her own daughter. I found this hilarious because Paris was giving Brittany more than she was to everyone else. And technically, she was my mom now too, so it just sounded like hateful statements. Brittany would get jealous over my boyfriend, my social media presence, pretty much anything that she didn't have in her life.
You know, I think your boyfriend would look so much better with me, since, I'm prettier and just better than you. We all know that blondies with blue eyes are prettier than you.
What? Brittany, he's my boyfriend. Why don't you just go find one yourself? Who says that blondes are prettier than everyone else anyway?
You know it's true. Nobody would date a stupid and ugly girl like you, especially not with your dark-toned skin.
Obviously, I felt very hurt by this statement. I am Latina, and my skin color was a bit more brown than other people I knew, but I had never found it to be a problem until Brittany pointed it out. I asked my boyfriend Cole at the time if he ever had a problem with how I looked, and he assured me that he loved the way I looked, which made me feel better. I knew that Brittany was just jealous, and I just decided to let her be. Now, here's when it gets even worse. Cole proposed to me shortly after we graduated from our universities, and I was completely ecstatic. We soon had a very fancy wedding, despite it not being my favorite. But Paris had helped pitch in a generous sum, and I was very grateful for her. At the wedding, London and Ryan, along with the rest of my family and even my biological mom, were there. They watched me kiss Cole and become married to him. Near the end of the wedding, Brittany showed up in a white dress, just like me. Naturally, I had become used to her antics, but my mom and stepmom were a little infuriated at what she'd done. But that's whatever, right? It's just a small disturbance, and I didn't let Brittany get the satisfaction of seeing me upset. Let's flash forward a bit. I had found out early on in me and Cole's relationship that I was infertile, but we didn't mind. The two of us had actually been planning adoption for a bit, and I finally got to adopt a sweet 8-year-old boy when I was 24. My family was very excited again, except for my stepsister.
Why would you ever want to get a kid that old? What if he's traumatized or something? And he's not even your real son. That's such a shame.
Brittany, although we might not be blood related, Anna and I still love Jaden, okay? Can you please try and be a little more respectful to this family? Every child is important, and that's what matters.
Well, that's almost no different than slavery. All I'm saying is, that's just sad for you.
My jaw dropped. How could my stepsister even compare slavery to adoption? I felt so incredibly hurt by her comments that I almost screamed at her with flying fists. But I managed to control myself and not let her words get to me. As life continued on, Cole and I managed to have a surrogate child, this time a baby girl. We named her Clara and adored her very much. By this time, Brittany was 26 and obsessing over having children. She would constantly offer to babysit my kids during the weekends when they weren't at school, and I found this a little strange. But she was offering to do this for free, so I really didn't mind. And one upside to this was that our relationship was getting a little better. But one day I decided to ask her why she didn't just get kids of her own. Hey, Brittany, if you love kids so much, why don't you just have kids yourself?
I'm too scared to get pregnant. Plus, that would ruin my beautiful and slim body and also give me stretch marks. Better to just adopt kids, yeah?
Weren't you just talking about how adoptees aren't our real kids? What made you suddenly change like this?
Well, it's just more convenient. Just leave me alone, why don't you?
Well, that was certainly a change of heart from my stepsister. I felt at least a little relieved, though. Maybe she was finally going to become more realistic and goal-oriented. Turns out, I was wrong. One day, I was at work when I got a call from my son's school. The secretary had told me that my son had been picked up. This was a surprise since I knew that Cole was out on a business trip and I'd never asked anyone to get my son. This was strange. I asked the secretary who it was, but she didn't have a name. This was really strange. But she did recall a blonde posh woman who acted pretty entitled. That had to be Brittany. I immediately called Brittany, but she didn't pick up the call. I decided to call Paris next, who seemed very concerned and tried to contact her daughter as well, but to no avail. I was in a panic as my family helped try to locate my stepsister. My dad, Kyle, immediately contacted the authorities. Soon, the state police found Brittany's car attempting to cross the border. But when they called us, the police told us her name was Jessica. Now I was obviously very confused. How can Brittany's car be pulled over, only for it to be Jessica? Nevertheless, Paris and Kyle went to the police station, only to find my son was taken there as well. And turns out, it was Brittany. She'd been living under fake names and committing crimes under them as well. She had also applied for adopting kids without telling her family, and she was actually denied from adopting kids. So she was jealous I had a husband and kids and wanted to make my life miserable by running away with my son. I guess she was really desperate. This was absurd. Paris went into a frenzy and demanded that the police arrest Brittany. But they explained that because of the Fifth Amendment, Brittany would probably only get 3 months for kidnapping my son.
No, you need to do something about this. I don't want a child kidnapper to be around.
Well, it is what it is, Mom. Maybe you should just let the charges drop and make this all a big misunderstanding. Right, Anna? You know I could expose you for that one thing.
Not right. I certainly wasn't about to let her free like that, but I was scared of the little empty threats she had made against me. Because who knew what she would do to me? I was about to speak when Paris and my dad piped up.
No, I'm going to make you go to court for this kidnapping and make sure that you get the maximum sentence possible. Then I'm going to disown you from the family. No more allowance, no more nothing. You can take your stuff and leave.
Brittany, it's time for you to learn your lesson. Not everything that you want, you will get. I'm sure you'll understand that after some time in prison.
I'm your daughter? How can you do this?
I was honestly very relieved that Paris had stood up for me like that. Even though Brittany was Paris's biological daughter, that didn't excuse her for the countless crimes she'd committed. About 2 weeks later, Brittany was taken to court and charged with a second-degree felony of kidnapping and sentenced to a little over a year in jail. My stepmom and dad had kept up to their promise and cut Brittany from the entire family. After the relatives found out, they wanted nothing to do with her too. There was no way we'd let her around our children now. Paris also sued Brittany, getting $1 million back. From then on, I felt that I was finally at peace and able to live this happy life without my toxic stepsister on my back. I also made sure to be sure who had my kids at all times. Cole and I feel like an unknown weight was lifted off our back. Brittany begged the police to let her have more than one call, and she used this to her advantage to call the news stations about her outrageous mother. But soon our side of the story had come out and everyone now knew Brittany for what she really was. A rotten, spoiled, and desperate kidnapper. So what do you think about the situation? Thanks for listening.